You know, apparently the United Kingdom was at one point taken seriously in the world. I know, I was surprised too when I heard that. I've lived here my whole life, and without wishing to offend my fellow Brits, this is without a doubt the least serious nation on the planet. Or at least it was until a certain dementia-ridden Cheeto got into office and begun the speed run of America's destruction. Can't really compete with a nation governed by an 80-year-old toddler with less mental processing power than a baked potato. Still, the UK is an odd little place. This is the land where a cup of tea is a cure-all for everything, where we have a king who does nothing except look. I'll get back to you on that. This is the nation of being mad at foreigners for trying to live in the very country that systematically stole everything that made their homeland special, and where someone can say the most racist thing you'll ever hear in such a polite way that you don't initially clock what was said to you. Naturally being set in the ridiculous land that I call home, Thank Goodness You're Here is a bloody strange game. Basically, it's a series of weird sketches, bookended by British mannerisms, which makes me applaud the development team's effort, whilst also double checking that they're at least not doing their mountain of drugs in too much of a public place. Look, this is England. Every third person is either dealing or using drugs to escape the reality that we live on a miserable little island, so I think assuming the team were on something is a fair bet. The game is really funny, genuinely charming, and a perfect pick-me-up for when things feel bleak, like for example, all the time. So let's talk about Thank Goodness You're Here, the most British game I've ever played, and that includes Zombie U and We Happy Few. Bit of a rhyme there. I bet I can make a poem out of that. Granted, it'll be an awful poem because I'm not a poet, but hey, you never know what might happen later in the video. Anyway, I welcome you, my friends, enemies, and all tea-sipping entities, to today's video. I'm Ronica. I hope you're having a decent day so far. We'll settle for decent. I have a bit of a short video for you today since we're talking about a game that can be beaten in less than an hour. It takes me longer to waddle to my local supermarket, and that's only because I'm hopelessly out of shape. We'll have a look at the mechanics, we'll have a talk about the writing, and see if it's worth a go if you've missed it until now. I'd say no spoilers because I do intend to keep some of the jokes away from you, but also it's 2026, the game is already 2 years old and cheaper than a fish and chips from your local takeaway, so you've had your chance. Nah, but for real, I won't show absolutely everything. Remember to give the video a like if you enjoy the ride. I'd also appreciate a comment if you have the time, and I hope you'll subscribe if game reviews and the like are your cup of tea. So without further ado, let's get into it. Thank Goodness You're Here was developed by Cole Supper and originally dropped in 2024. I can't tell you exactly what genre it's supposed to be. It feels at times like a less complex point-and-click adventure game where you're just in complete control rather than, you know, pointing and clicking. But the solutions to most problems are still incredibly roundabout, so that's why I say it. It's a mostly 2D isometric game, except when it's sometimes a 2D platformer, though get any vision of something akin to Super Mario out of your head because there's nothing to stomp, nothing to die to, no power-ups, and no princess to rescue. There isn't even a secret room full of toads to scam you. What a shame. For the controls, you move with the left stick, you jump with X, and you interact with things by pressing square, which usually takes the form of you humorously slapping said nearby thing. And that's it. There are no other controls to discuss, aside from options being the thing that will open the menu, but that's really it. There's no camera management, no advanced traversal abilities, there's not really much of anything. I've played games from cereal boxes that have more mechanical depth. You can't even fail 99.9% of the time because the game just isn't built like that. If you just wander around and pat everything, you'll eventually find the way forward. I counted a single instance in the entire game where I had to try what I will loosely call a challenge again, and it's not exactly complex. I didn't fail because it was difficult, because it most certainly wasn't. I just didn't think to hold on to the grab button to keep hold of the hammer that I was trying to fish out the local brook. Like I outlined in the intro, the game is best described as a collection of jokes which you just happen to need to press a button to start and finish. The humour is very Monty Python in that it often presents bizarre situations to us whilst characters react to it with all the same emotion they'd have reading the local bus timetable. I'd say it would work just fine as a short comedy film, but then again, I think it works best as a video game because the progression of puzzles and solutions is a bit all over the place. If it was a short film, then it would be harder to follow than the plot of Murder Drones. Look, I've watched that several times and I still don't fully know what's going on, although I should remind the class that I'm debilitatingly stupid, so it could just be that. A grand example of the way the game does progression in its gags and story is this lad in bed. He's sick, he needs shopping, but he doesn't like other people touching it, so he wants you to go with his endlessly extending arm to the local corner shop and help him pick up some breakfast. But to get there, you need to agree to help another character track down some spirit level bubbles at the same local shop, and even then you don't just walk to the shop, you have to slide through pipes, you have to run through alleyways, fall down a man's chimney, help chop up some potatoes at a local chip shop so that you can feed a sick cow, and even then when you get the shopping you don't go right back, you have to go through a garden, then a department store, then through the local pub. It's a whole thing. It's a series of wacky misadventures that are all quite funny, and honestly, half the time I have no clue what to expect even when doing the most mundane of tasks. The game often got me to laugh, out loud. Yes, I did a few real-life lols. I thought those were just a fairy tale. I think a lot of it works well because the game doesn't have much going on mechanically. If the game was too complex, it would probably lose something. Without a lot of moving parts to bother us, we get to focus on the humour, which is the right move because that's what we're here for. The entire gameplay loop consists of going around this town, slapping people to get them to talk to you, and if they have a task they need help with, like say running out of milk and you need to go get some or losing a key, then it's up to you to bumble around the village until you accidentally your way into the solution. The most complicated thing you'll have to do in this game is sometimes mash the action button a few extra times or just wait when the event is out of your hands. But who are you? Who is our protagonist, this little guy, this little fella? I have absolutely no idea. He works for a company. That company wants to sell its stuff in the village of Barnsworth, and we've got a meeting with the Lord Mayor to discuss it. What are we selling? Who do we work for? What's going on? Why do we periodically change size as we explore the town? Well, I'm afraid, dear viewer, that those sort of questions are going to be taken behind a garden shed and introduced to 2 shotgun barrels. It doesn't matter who we are, says the game, or the details of why we're actually here. It's just a loose framing device to get protag A to location B to act like a sea turtle. You're also not the brightest bulb in the knife block and can't just leave via the door when the 10th story window will do.
Good grief, lad. The front door's right there. We're 10 stories up, for crying out loud.
This little guy, the player character, he's a bit simple. He is a helpful sort, mind, but almost to a fault, and is no less absurd than the world he finds himself in. No matter what needs to be done, he just gets on with it, even if the method only makes sense to the puzzle game designer high on PCP and on day 12 of an energy drink binge. Need to gather some seagulls for an odd military man living in a dumpster, or maybe help a villager acquire some compost from a man who is deeply distressed at the size of his head? Our little fella does it all with the same blank expression on his cute little face as he does when he enters the meat realm and communes with the spirits of meals past who tell you of their woes.
One dark winter's night, me father brought me and my sisters a lamb each, and but a single sheep knife between us. Mine, they run to the litter, jolted as I made the cut. It bleated and bled for a fortnight, and I wept.
What on earth is happening? What sells a lot of the jokes to me is that they're delivered with an almost deadpan charm by earnest people, and then we move on regardless of what nonsense comes about. We don't dwell on anything. The consequences of the joke are still usually present in the world, but it ceased to be the main thing, and we're just gonna have to accept that. The townsfolk don't really react because this is just how Barnsworth people live. Their world is already strange. This is normal to these weirdos.
Oh, thank goodness you're here.
So for the most part, they just get on with it, and I must say that I find this equal parts charming and upsettingly realistic. Again, it has that old Monty Python approach where yes, the world is silly and all over the place, but the people living in it have adapted to the craziness and it takes a lot to faze them. It can still be done, but nothing short of a milk bukkake is going to make them turn a head.
Oh.
And even then, they're usually responding to the suddenness of the interference rather than the milking itself. But then again, I suppose if I lived on a street with more sight gags per inch than O2 molecules, I too would become somewhat dulled to the entire situation, but this is kind of what makes the game that much funnier to me. I could wring the game's neck for going the silent protagonist route since everyone else is written and voiced quite well, but then I thought about it and realised that no reaction that he could give would be any funnier or more fitting than just how little he cares. He's got the exact right expression, the exact right energy for someone who deals with silly stuff for a living and who has become kinda numb to it but is still happy to help, so just kinda goes along with everything. I like to wonder what he's been up to in life and how it's led to him being able to emerge from a shop-sized pie, landing face first on the path, and have this elicit the same response as mopping the floor. Anyway, normally now I do a bit about the other characters. I intended to discuss them in something approaching depth, but it's not like I have a long list of details of their histories, their personalities, and their hopes and their dreams to work with. Each one exists either to deliver a humorous back and forth with one another or to send you on another quest. They don't really need much else, and they don't do much else. Sure, I could point out how Florence here has 3 jobs across town, a crush on Colin, and will take time to laugh at your expense when she can, but in doing so I've described every single thing about her. There is literally nothing else noteworthy about this character. I could mention how Big Ron of Big Ron's Pies is larger than life but also a caring and supportive friend, but once again that's where the info ceases. I could even comment on the frustration of Jasper, whose tools have gone missing all around town town and point out that the fury he's feeling is misplaced against the townspeople, because we know the rats are the ones stealing his stuff and all of his baseless accusations are going to cause a great deal of harm in the long run. Being a pretentious butthole, which given the fact I recently attended a poetry reading with my friends, it's a condition that's only getting worse, I wondered if Thank Goodness You're Here was actually a cautionary tale about helping everyone else to your own detriment, or if it wanted us to wonder if blindly doing what everyone else tells you to do is really the best way to go about life. Maybe we're supposed to see our little guy, our little fella, as the beaten down working man who puts everyone else's needs above his own as he dies a little more inside with every task he accomplishes. But in reality, it's not that deep. I'm definitely reading way too much into things. I think I already failed the assignment when I tried to find meaning in a game where an old lady adopted a giant sausage as a pet within seconds of the oversized casing landing on her lap and she didn't even bat an eye. It's a comedy game, not one that exists to make you go on existential thought journeys, merely one that wants to amuse you, and it definitely does that. The world of Thank Goodness You're Here is just silly, and I mean that as a compliment. It does have some basic commentary on things, like how some shops will charge more for nothing special, or how we can take what we perceive as flaws in ourselves and make them into our strengths if we're wise about it, which is always welcome. I do like a bit of depth in things, but ultimately the game is here for a laugh. It's a funny little game in a funny little town. One thing I really appreciate is how so many of the characters have just enough little details in their mannerisms and homes to make them feel like genuine people who actually live here. Honestly, that surprised me, since this can be a struggle for bigger, more serious games which don't exist as one big gag. I'd say think back to My Child of Ages, a game that seems to want to be taken seriously with a big sad story about environmentalism, destruction, grief and loss, but forgot to write down any details about its characters save for being sad and old, which made the whole journey kind of boring. Our leading man in Thank Goodness You're Here has all the personality of a beige washcloth. His skills begin and end at slapping things in the face, well, shin because of his size, but everything he does with an air of confident incompetence. He's a jack of all trades, master of none, barely even passable in most of them, given that he basically makes a mess everywhere he goes, but the locals appreciate the effort and he gets to walk off feeling like he did something useful when often he kind of didn't. Like, yeah, you and I both know that just dropping a whole box of rat poison onto the floor of a shop isn't a wise move, but the shopkeep doesn't seem to care that that's what we did, so why should we? We're not paid to think. I'd be surprised if we were paid at all. Personality-wise, our leading man doesn't need much of anything. He works best as a silent idiot. That is what he is, and the game is better for it. If he stopped to think about anything, if he dwelled on the mistakes and weird things he did, it would be less funny. At the end of the game, there's a series of gags where he looks in some of them a bit more concerned than others until he slams the doors behind him after helping basically everyone in town. Clearly exasperated, he then goes into the mayor's office for that meeting he's here for, who, just like everyone else, will say,
"Ah, thank goodness you're here."
Oh yeah, whenever anyone in the game has a task for you, they start by saying, "Thank goodness you're here," in a variation of a British accent.
Thank goodness you're here.
Oh, thank goodness you're here.
Thank goodness you're here.
Oh, thank goodness you're here.
Thank goodness you're here.
Anyway, the mayor says, "Thank goodness you're here," before proceeding to give him a task, and that's where the game ends, because we already know how this song and dance will play out. I'd like it if the game was a bit longer and had a more robust story, but not in a "this felt undeserved and I want my money back" way. Rather, it's a "I like this game and I want more of it" way. Although that said, if it was longer than an hour, it probably would lose something after a certain point. The ending is a bit abrupt, but it's not like it's wrapping up a proper narrative. It's just the end to the series of misadventures, and that's perfectly fine. And oh, look, I ran out of things to say already. By the Empress, thank goodness you're here. You are a brief spell, aren't you? I've had panic attacks that lasted longer. Apparently that's not good, but hey, one and a half dozen mental health professionals I've worked with over the last decade though. Really though, there is nothing more to this game. It's just a short, silly adventure filled with amusing bits and funny jokes that also has a good vibe to it without it being a mushy feelings kind of thing. No hate to mushy feelings type media. I do love emotional things that leave me with a bittersweet smile. The amount of times I've rewatched Mary and Max are a testament to that fact. But I also like to laugh. It's the whole reason I own a mirror and a framed copy of my father's death certificate. Thank Goodness You're Here is a very amusing game that gets the feel of British people very right. None of that atomfall nonsense where the Brits are just Americans with simultaneously better and worse accent. None of that we happy few crappy pooness where the gameplay loop was boring to the point of lethality and the game was so unstable it made Fallout 4 look good. Seriously, we happy few, with all your advanced systems and procedural generation and deep character stuff, you lose out in entertainment factor and replayability to a game with like 3 buttons that comes and goes faster than a bowel movement. I've replayed Thank Goodness You're Here several times already because it's a really solid piece of entertainment. It has some great line deliveries that have become vocal stims for me. It has a lot of gags that I find utterly charming to revisit. It has such an authentically British feel and I love it for that, and it has just enough interactivity to justify the video game part of itself. I suppose I have to be that lovable bastard you all no, and complain a little bit. Yeah, I think the ending kinda sucks with how sudden it is. You literally just walk into the mayor's office after everything is done and the game ends. You don't get to see the mayor or do whatever you came here to do. I still don't know what our actual job is. But it really doesn't matter. It's not the interesting part of proceedings. Yes, the climax really is just us plodding into a room, then the credits roll, the entire final scene conveying the same raw emotion and comedy of a quiet fart that sort of smells like eggs but not too much. But it's honestly not a big deal. It's not what the game is about. The game is about walking around and doing silly things for a little while. It tells its jokes, they land more often than they crash. Even the non-laugh out loud ones are still welcome since they make the game world feel very consistent, and that's very important to me, as you probably know. There's no ceremony to the end. Right before the end, we got to take part in a fun musical number which had us do things all around town, and because of that I left the game with a smile. I had fun along the way. The game might be so lacking in mechanics that it's the video game equivalent of being malnourished, but the writing and voice performances carry it like a champ. The art style is no slouch either. It's simple but still rich in details. It has an almost children's storybook look to it, which I do find makes things a little bit funnier when they veer into adult humour, but I also don't get the impression that the art style was chosen for that juxtaposition specifically. It probably just looks this way because it's kind of amusing in itself, and the game is all about that, which I really hope was the case. The joke being, oh look, the character that looks kid-friendly said the fuck word, is so overdone at this point that if that was the reason behind its decision, I would probably think less of the game. Overall though, playing Thank Goodness You're Here always left me in a good mood because it was always working on multiple levels to deliver comedy, which I can always appreciate. Thank goodness you happen to be in the vicinity all of a sudden. It's a delightful little game that comes in, does its funny little things, then sods off before it outstays its welcome. It tells a lot of jokes, not every single one is a knee slapper of epic proportions that makes me do the literal lols that I spoke of earlier, but I'd wager you'll probably find plenty that you do like. I spent the majority of the journey with a dumb smile on my big stupid face because the game was always passively amusing, be it in the little details of how we change size, how some of our animations look at a distance, how some of the signs and wall decorations take a couple of seconds to register as being a gag at all. I really like this one in the alleyway. This one here asking if someone's looking for a good time and then it just has times on the tickets. Like, that's just, I don't know why that amuses me so much. It just really does. It's so stupid. I love it. I also love the nursery rhyme the kids are singing about the kid with the big head.
Horses are red, violets are blue, Roger's got a big head and he's a massive bellend.
I don't know what to tell you, I just thought this was really funny. This is just the sort of town where everything costs 10 bob, where the businessmen sell bricks fresh from the wall, where the local locksmith is a drunk, and all the people just get along with the weirdness. There are so many gags here that feel exactly like the bits that me and my fellow Brit-born friends would come up with in our own spare time, which really helped appeal to my strange brain. It has that wonderful quotable nature to it, which for my extremely autistic arse is absolutely perfect. I now get to confuse my loved ones with references that'll seem familiar, but I'll never quite know where they came from exactly. Only this time I'm not pulling them from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy or the first 3 seasons of SpongeBob. My current favourite is this small bit from The Locksmith when you're in the beer dimension. Just go with it.
Ah, nothing like a nice wet pint to start the day. Every morning I wake up, can of lager, then I do a big wee, then I get out of bed and go downstairs for my morning pint.
I don't know why, I think it's just the delivery that makes it humorously endearing to me. I had a good time with this game, I really enjoyed this weird ride. I'm often one to push back against the idea of it being the journey not a destination that matters, because at least half the time I set off on a journey, it's to get to a place and I'd be a lot less happier if I didn't get to that place. But in a game like this, it's kind of clear from the opening that this is what this adventure is all about. You pop in, the game will tell some jokes at you, be silly for about an hour, then you pop off to have your pie and tea. It doesn't waste time, it just shows up, does what it feels it needs to, then vanishes into the ether that's made of tea. Tifa, there we go, we'll go with that. Sorry, again, very autistic, and combining 2 words into one is just a height of comedy to me, and also I started doing it as a joke years ago, and now I can't stop even in serious moments. It's like 15 quid at most for an hour of content, but honestly, I feel it's well worth it. It uses that hour well, and again, I've replayed it multiple times already just to catch the jokes I've missed, or just to hear the same jokes again because I really like the delivery. Seriously, never underestimate the power of great delivery. I am a sucker for compelling line delivery. I will listen to a scene over and over again if I love the voice work. There is one Punky Doodle short that I rewatch all the time because I just love how the final line is delivered. I suppose I should probably mention it's Alice Winterhold who does the audio that I'm currently praising over the visual. I mean, don't get me wrong, the visual is great. I love how these are drawn, but the line is the thing we're here for. I also constantly quote the Vogons from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy because, again, I just love the way they say words. It's weird how satisfying I find it. And yeah, if I am particularly energy deprived on one day, I'm more likely to just watch a playthrough of the game on YouTube, but I'm not unhappy that I own it because it's good. It's a good game, it's very enjoyable, and I highly recommend it. That's it, that's all I've got. I hope you enjoyed this little review. It's a nice change of pace from the hour-long nonsense I've been tending towards more and more lately. I don't mean to make stuff that long, I just start writing and then keep writing because I genuinely enjoy that side of things, and then the whole thing winds up longer than a blue whale's willy and just as hard for us all to take. Oh, Titan, how hard it is to take. Anyway, enough of me being deeply upsetting for one day. Well, almost. Games set in Britain sure are odd, but the variety of which I must applaud. We've Scary Zombie U, Crappy Wee Happy Few. Now thank goodness you're here, join the squad. There we go, a really low effort poem like I hinted at the beginning. The world is now slightly worse for its existence because I cannot write poetry. Anywho, that'll do. Thank you so much for being here once again, my loves. I always appreciate it so much. You take the time to watch this and that just means the world to me. So my dears, until we meet again, take care, drink your tea, pet your local sausage dog, and watch that old movie that makes you smile, and I'll see you in the next video.
The day I went and joined the 93rd, the chums I used to run with said they thought I looked absurd. They saluted me and gathered round me in the ring, and as I wagged my tartan kilt they all began to sing. He's a bro, Elan laddie, Private Jock McDade. There's no another sodger like him in the Scotch Brigade. Reared among the heather, you can tell he's Scottish built by the wig